except we'll be doing it for real. So, like so many things with devotion, it's not about getting it right, it's about it being practiced, it's what's in your heart. So, we are not giving a performance here. I say we, that's you, us. We are doing practice. This is a practice. This is a practice to raise our vibration so that we come into a higher place in ourselves, so that we are gradually and inevitably purifying our heart, and through practice this will happen. The essential thing is to practice. It's like doing your mantra every day. It's like meditating every day. So, that we'll all do together. Then there will be the Kirtan, which Pamela will lead, and it's a call and response, so the usual way. And then at the end of the Kirtan, we'll have about 5 minutes of silent meditation. Then we will look at the video of Swami Satchidananda, and this is compilation of old film footage from 40 years ago that I've managed to put together as one little piece, and that lasts for about 23 minutes. And then after that we can have a time of discussion and sharing, and then finally we have the closing prayers together with the arti, and then we can enjoy some lovely food. So that's the outline.
But what about, sorry, what's your name?
My name's Charles.
Charles, aren't you going to play something at some point then?
Yeah.
When are you going to do you're doing that first?
I think that was the original plan.
Yeah, okay, we're making this up as we go along, Charles.
That's not text. The original Kirtan is supposed to be here in 5 minutes.
Right. Oh, he's coming in 5 minutes. Okay, great. That's even greater. Yeah.
So,
But then he's got to set up, we're going to be... what do you think?
If he's coming ready to
there's
do
no
it.
setup. There's no setup. It's just, there's no mics. Anyway, so maybe we can just do all together.
Yeah.
You can join us and just play.
Okay, so we'll do the
Yeah.
Integral Yoga Kirtan.
He just played the bits. He will bring tabla or something.
Oh,
like
that's great.
Okay.
And then
That's
just
a
join
great
in.
idea.
That's it.
That's a great idea. Okay. But we don't want to leave Charles out because Charles has very kindly.
Yes.
I'd rather not leave it until the end.
Yeah.
I may, I won't go into the reasons, I may have to leave before the end.
All right. When you say before the end, what's your definition of end? I mean, do you have to leave at a certain time?
No, it's just that I'm taking care of an animal,
Yeah.
and I left the house at 12:30,
Yeah.
and it's
So, right.
it's in Putney, so I
Sooner is
get out
better.
at 10 o'clock at night.
I'm just wondering, maybe if you played something now, we could. Is it something really we could sit and listen to? Is it something?
It's a meditation. It's an opportunity to sort of enter into the space,
All
sort
right.
of to gather one's thoughts and just to let them go.
Okay. Well, so what do you think? Supposing we start with
I
that?
think that sounds
Yeah.
lovely.
And then, yeah. All right. Thank you, Charles.
Do you want to wait until this the Kirtan person comes?
No, I think
so
if
maybe
we start.
maybe we can start first and then
Yeah.
everything.
Okay.
Because he has to go anyway, so then.
Yeah. Okay. All right. First of all, we'll do the opening prayers, and then after that, if you would start, Charles.
Really?
So just.
liberation. Salutations to the Omkar. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. The Guru creates, the Guru preserves, the Guru dissolves the universe. The Guru in fact is the Absolute. Salutations to the Satguru. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Satchidananda Murtaye Nishpapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase. The Guru is auspiciousness, embodiment of truth, knowledge, bliss. Salutations to the one who is beyond the world, peaceful, independent, and radiant. Twameva Mata Pita Twameva, Twameva Bandhuscha Saka Twameva, Twameva Vidya Dravinam Twameva, Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Thou art my mother, my father, thou art. Thou art my family, my friend, thou art. Thou art my knowledge, my wealth, thou art. Thou art my all the light of all lights, thou art.
Okay, Charles, over to you. And approximately, Charles, how long will you be doing? Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
And we have to tune his mind.
Carry on. Thank you, Charles. That was beautiful. Good. So now we can continue with the endeavour we're looking. Right, so carry on, welcome. So we're now going to do the Kirtan as we do it in the ashram. So nobody's rehearsed this. So do you think you will be able to sort of, as it were, find the way to follow?
Are you leading the Kirtan?
Yeah.
Come forward.
As we were just saying, this is not a performance, this is practice. So you can't get it wrong. We can only go deeper.
Shiva Guru Hari Guru Ram
Ram
Lord Buddha,
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
And that meant that he had to become a United States citizen. So when he was going through the application procedure to become a United States citizen, he was asked, why do you wish to become a US citizen? And he said, no, I don't want to become a citizen. He said, they want me to stay, they want me to be a citizen. So he became a US citizen, and gradually he gathered, or more people gathered around him. It's a little bit like bees. Bees know where the nectar is, and people found that nectar. They found that spiritual nectar. And one of the very high-profile things that Gurudev was asked to do was to open the rock festival at Woodstock in 1969. So there's some wonderful video footage. You'll see a tiny clip of it in a minute, where he's sitting there on this big pile of cushions on this stage. There's thousands of people out there, and he's talking to them and saying how America needs to lead the world in spirituality, that America has so much to give. And America, I think in many ways, was so responsive to Swami that it allowed so much to blossom. And a pop singer by the name of Carole King enabled an ashram to be purchased in a place called Pomfret in Connecticut, and they were there for some years, but the winters there are very long. So ultimately they sold that property and they moved south to the state of Virginia, and they bought 1,000 acres of land, and to this day that's where the ashram is, and also where the wonderful Lotus temple has been built. Lotus stands for Light of Truth Universal Shrine. So I would really encourage you, if you can, to make the trip to Yogaville, because there's such a wonderful energy there. Gurudev's body is there, but more than his body, and this was very interesting for some of us who knew him when we went back to the ashram after he'd left the body, but it's like he was more at the ashram after he'd left the body than when he was there physically. The whole countryside is just permeated with his energy, and it'll be 12 years in a few weeks' time since he attained what's called Mahasamadhi, which is an enlightened soul's sort of conscious leaving of the body. And it was my amazing good fortune to meet him, to spend time with him privately, to stay in hotels with him, to eat with him in restaurants, to see, if you like, to see behind the scenes. And there's an old saying that if you want to know somebody, the best way to get to know them is to travel with them. And we travelled with Gurudev, and we saw that he really was the real deal. He really was very solid indeed. I first met him in 1998. I was reading a book by an American journalist who'd compiled a whole lot of interviews with different spiritual teachers, and there was just 4 pages in this 350-page book of an interview with Gurudev. And as I read it, it's like he reached out and grabbed me. And I was already on a spiritual path at the time. I was still kind of seeking, but I kind of landed in the kind of Ramakrishna Vedanta path. And so I thought I found a path, and then he found me. And when I read those 4 pages, something in me just responded to his pull. And I told my wife of what had happened, and she said, yes, I felt he was a very special being. And she said, and I actually have bought his biography. So unbeknown to me in the house, we had the biography of Gurudev. It's called The Apostle of Peace. And I just couldn't wait to read it, absolutely devoured it. And it's not the best written book on the planet, but it really gives you an excellent flavour of Swami up to about 1990. Another book that I would recommend to all of you is The Golden Present. And as you can see by the condition of this book, I've had this since the day I met Gurudev. So this book is 16 years old now, 16 and a bit years old. And I have read it nearly every day for 16 years because there's 365 pages in it of daily sayings. And if I could truly absorb, imbibe, inhabit some of the teachings in this book, I would be really a lot further down the path than I am. But anyway, the main thing is to have aspiration, and we never know when enlightenment will come and knock us on the head. But this is a terrific book. This is a terrific. I actually, when I was at the ashram a couple of months ago, I bought myself a new book. I thought I will kind of retire this book and I'll start a new book. But my son lives in America and he lives in California, and when we got to California, he wasn't in a great shape. He was a little bit upset about things. And he's interested in Zen Buddhism. So I gave him my new golden present because I thought it was better that he had the book and I'd just stick with the old one. And so we shall see. I'll just tell you one thing from my life. I could tell you many stories about being with Gurudev, driving around with him, all the things I saw, and maybe future get-togethers, I can share some of those things with you. But one thing in particular I want to share with you, and I put it in an email to a few of you the other day. Although I had this great good fortune to be close to him physically, the closest I ever felt to him was when he was 4,000 miles away in the USA. I was in a hotel in Liverpool. I'd been to a funeral that day of somebody who committed suicide. It was a painful funeral. I'd then driven north to Liverpool for a business meeting the next day. I was in a hotel. It was raining. It was dark. It was cold. I would rather have been home. I felt a little bit out of sorts, maybe a virus or something. So I was feeling low. And I had my golden present with me. And then I thought, well, he's only a thought away. He's really only a thought away. So I sat on my bed and I just really brought into mind, just really asking him, saying, please, can I connect with you? Please. And to my astonishment, I was flooded with light, absolutely flooded with light. And I just sat there on my bed, flooded with his presence. And that was more palpable, more powerful than being this close to him in a car for 4 hours. And the reason I'm telling you that is that if you want, you can also have that same experience. You know, because, I mean, Gurudev used to say about Jesus, Buddha, other great teachers, he said most of their devotees never ever met them in the flesh, but they were inspired by them through their lives, but they also, through their devotion, could make that connection on a subtle level. And you can do this with, if you like, any teacher of your choosing that inspires you. It doesn't have to be Swami Satchidananda. In my case it was, because I took initiation with him. But, you know, this isn't exclusive. So, at that point, we will now hear from the teacher himself. We need to call Jodie because she wants to hear the video. Oh, thank you very much indeed. Plus she knows how to switch it on. Now, the sound quality is kind of good enough, but I think, much as I hate to disturb the kind of vibration and how we are, I think it's better if we kind of just orientate ourselves over there so that we can see it and hear it clearly. And then we can come and sit back in this configuration.
As I noted earlier, charity begins at home. Not only the charity, but everything begins at home. Whatever you want to see outside, you should have it yourself. The perception begins with you. If you want love all around you, you should have that love in you. Because what you have, you project. So to see a better world, a peaceful world, you should find the peace within you. That is the beginning of a peaceful world. And that is the essence of yoga. To find the ease and peace in you and then relate to other beings with that ease and peace, then you will be a wonderful, useful person to make a better world.
This was really the trend. It was like the newest thing. There was an awakening really happening that everybody wanted to be awoken.
What it is ain't exactly.
The artist Peter Max was part of the 60s hippie culture and was one of those responsible for bringing Satchidananda, or Swamiji as he's known to his followers, to the West.
And I said to him, I said, Swami, America needs you. And I remember he kind of laughed, he slapped his knee and he said, why? America needs me. I said, America needs you. And he said, well, if America needs me, maybe I'll come.
Yes, certainly there was a little cultural difference. I could say a mild shock, because I didn't expect that. The first group of people who were around me, they just were lying down on the floor and showing their feet right over my face and blowing cigarette and say, Swami, could you tell us something about yoga?
Swamiji gave the opening address at the Woodstock Rock Festival in 1969.
America leads the whole world in several ways. The grandson of Mahatma Gandhi met me and asked me what's happening in America. And I said, America is helping everybody in the material field, but the time has come
Swami Satchidananda came to the United States from India and Ceylon in 1966. Although he only planned a 2-day visit to the city, he stayed, attracted students, and ultimately built one of the largest yoga schools in the Western world, with 20 branches in Europe and North America, and tens of thousands of pupils in the United States alone.
Swami Satchidananda's teachings on yoga, diet, and natural lifestyle influenced a whole generation of young doctors. One of these doctors was Dean Ornish.
For over 20 years, Dr. Dean Ornish has been making headlines as the first doctor to prove now that heart disease can really be reversed by changing your lifestyle.
I had the fortune of having Swami Satchidananda in my life to be a teacher. And so I'd go to him and I'd say, well, what do you think? I'd like to do this study. You think it'll work? He said, I know it'll work. And I'm saying all this just to tell you what a debt that I feel to Swamiji, not only for teaching me these things in my own life, but equally important for giving me that sense of confidence of what was possible. Really, all of the work that I've been doing is just what I've learned from Sri Swami Satchidananda in different forms.
What do you do when you get angry with somebody on the set? My professional job is to learn as much as I can. Swami Satchidananda, he just died, was a great man. You'd have liked him. He said, when you're angry, the last thing you get is information. It's the first thing you want and the last thing you get. So anger, he said, never pays. It never pays. So I gave him an example. I said, okay, Swami, I love to call her by her first name. I said, okay, Swami, I come home and my wife's in bed with another guy. There she is, in bed with another guy. What do I do, Swami? I'm going to yell and scream. He says, aha, very brilliant. Yell, scream, and he runs and she thinks you're a maniac. What if you said, I'm going to make some tea? Three of us talk about this. Then he was smart. Who owns that moment? You do. Who's going to get information? You will. By not being angry.
That's Swami 8 from Texas.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Anyway, that's right. You're not Texas. That's right. You're not Texas. That's right. You're not Texas. Texas wants you anyway.
Satchidananda's fame in New York and elsewhere stems in part from his activism within the circle of religious leaders. In 1966, he met with Pope Paul, and again in 1970. The Swami, along with clergymen of the Jewish, Buddhist, and Catholic faith, directs an ecumenical organization called the Center for Spiritual Studies in New York.
The world is going through a lot of chaotic condition because of the religious differences. I feel that religion is to bring the humanity together, to make them feel that we are all family, one global family. But if the very same religion is separating people, then there's something wrong with the religion. But then again, I can't check, there's anything wrong with the religion. Because religions teach to be loving each other. So then why? Then there I see it's not the religion, but the religious ego. A group of people understand the religion in some way and say, our understanding is the only way. Your understanding is wrong. So we narrow the religion, we don't go to the depth of the religion, so they quarrel in the name of religion, which is supposed to bring us together. So I thought we should do something. So we started with having religious groups coming together and discussing, giving talks. And then all of a sudden, why not we do something instead of just talking. So that gave room for this yoga ecumenical service. We call it YES, say yes to everything. Then I thought there should be a place to remind that, a permanent place. It is that idea that made me think of Lotus. LOTUS. It stands for Light of Truth Universal Shrine. And this is a unique place, the first shrine which could accommodate altares for all the various faiths. Because even if you don't believe in God, that is your faith. A non-believer also has a faith. So it accommodates all the various faiths. So anybody who comes here can see it's my place. And people have all over the world come, visited, and they felt so much at home. So it's a physical, concrete symbol to express the goal that we should get united in the name of religion. That's the purpose of religion. Let's not kill each other in the name of God and religion.
I've been happy lately, thinking about the good things to come, and I believe it could be, someday it's going to come. I've been smiling lately, dreaming about the world as one, and I believe it could be, someday it's going to come. Someday it's going to come. Come take me home again. Come on this train. Someday it's going to come. Come on this train. Take me home again. Peace train sounding louder. Glide on the peace train. Come on, peace train.
Seated here with me is Swami Satchidananda. When I saw him today in our agreement room, I said, I think of you every day, and I meant that. I do. I read your book, Beyond Words, every morning. It gives me a little something special, and I'm so happy you could be with us. Thank you. I want to start with some basic things. We have an audience today, maybe we can do some breathing with them later. But I've never really asked you this. How can anybody get to be a Swami? Do you need, an outfit like this, or could you wear a three-piece suit and be a Swami?
Sure, it's not the dress that makes the Swami, or the beard that makes the Swami. The Swami means the one who is the master of himself. That's the literal meaning of Swami. That means if you can be the master of your own body and mind and the senses, then it doesn't matter what you are doing, what you are wearing, you are a Swami.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have mystical qualities. It doesn't mean that you have to essentially practice yoga. One could be a Swami and be a businessman,
a
woman,
anybody.
Anyone can be.
Anyone. Your profession could be anything.
Well, for example, with you, what were you doing 25 years ago?
Well,
prior to being
almost 40 years back.
40 years back. Let's go 40 years back. I'm just curious a little bit about your life.
After my education, I went into the business field. I was in the automobile industry. I was an automobile engineer, electronics, and sometimes cinematography. I was working in studios like this.
Well, what happened that got you out of that business and into this?
Well, somehow in the beginning I thought that only by getting into some kind of limelight and doing things and getting the appreciation and applause of people, I can be happy, otherwise no. But later on I found out that I don't need to depend on anything to be happy, because I am just happy without any of these things.
You're always about the same level of happiness?
Always, because I don't depend on anything, any level to be.
One of the things I read in your book that I try to think about a lot is something that basically is like this: a person is limited according to his attachments.
Yes.
Explain what that means.
See, a person, when I say a person's natural quality is to be happy always.
Are we all born with a certain amount of potential for happiness?
See, even the scriptures say, to quote Bible, for example, God made man in his own image. What is the image of God? To be unhappy? No. So God's image is happy. So I would like to call him Mr. Happy.
God?
Yes.
Mr. Happy?
Mr. Happy.
Son of God. Maybe it should just be
when I am,
happy though. Maybe it should be Mr. You know?
well, Miss or Mrs. or something, yes. I need not put him into
A sexual category.
No,
That's
no,
really
no,
just
no.
a label, sure.
Sometimes the Hindu philosophy talks about God as that, it.
Well, when people will say to you, particularly if you get involved in a debate, Swami, they try to get you to define your religion or define the God that you believe in. How do you describe that God, other than happy?
God is, see, we can think of God in terms of certain cosmic qualities, say cosmic love, cosmic beauty, unlimited love, not conditional love, unconditional love. And his, again, sorry to his because
it's a habit.
It's a habit.
Sure.
So its quality is expressed in the very nature itself. Take anything in the nature except human beings, because they have been given a little free will to forget that.
It's our free will that messes us up so frequently.
Exactly. All other things, plants, animals, they don't have any free will. They are still in the same natural state. So they are always happy. They don't look for any reward for what they do.
Well, how do we involve ourselves in being uninvolved with our free will? If our free will is what's giving us our problems to begin with.
That is where sometimes I think that God must be a little mischievous in giving you that long rope and wanting to know what you are going to do with that. That's why even when he created Adam, he told Adam clearly, Adam, I have made you in my own image, but I am giving you some free will to do whatever you want. At the same time, he showed him the tree and the fruit and told him not to eat the fruit. It's like your son. You take your son, open the refrigerator and show him the candy inside and tell your son, don't eat.
Sure. It's like Mayor Koch said,
yes.
If you tell somebody to think about not to think about elephants, they think about elephants. That's a quote from our mayor of New York. He actually said that.
So,
along the way to becoming a Swami, right, what were the most difficult things for you to give up about yourself? Because I'm sure you must have gone through enormous changes.
Well, in the beginning, as I said, I was attached to things, thinking that I will be happy only by having it.
Did you have a sports car, for example?
Yes, in a way.
3-speed?
Yes,
yes. So you had to give that up, sort of?
I had to give that up. And I had many things that, like anybody else, I was attached to. But later on, I found out that when I am attached to something, I become anxious. Will I lose it? Or will somebody touch it and spoil it?
But how can, I understand that, and this still bothers me. How can we have goals? How can we try to achieve, whether it's like Peter Max is with us in the audience today, try to be an artist and try to be successful, or an athlete, or the Smothers Brothers and try to do well, and I love my wife, or Jack LaLanne to have it. How can we achieve what we want to achieve without being attached?
Okay, what is the final achievement, even behind all these achievements? What do you want to be by achieving?
Happy.
That's what. So,
this is true.
So that I say you have it already, even without all that. But I don't say that you should just sit down without doing anything to be happy. Do anything and everything. It's like a mono play. You shuffle your own chord, you play it, and when you don't want it, close it. Same way you can play with all the things. But do not depend on them to be happy. The minute you become dependent, then you lose your happiness.
Do you understand this? Makes sense to everybody? Good. I'll tell you what, we'll take a break. I know there's some questions in the audience, and we'll be back with questions right after this.
The literal meaning of yoga is to unite. The root is yuj, or to yoke, together. In a broader sense, maintaining the equanimity is yoga.
And I said to Swami, America needs you. And he
said, well, America needs a new country.
America is helping everybody in the material field, but the time has come for America to help the whole world with spirituality also.
Yoga gives you the foundation. Then you can build anything you want over it. So it's not an escapism at all. On the other hand, it is a preparation to face the world and to make the world a happy place to live.
There's evidence that there were meditating yogis back easily 5,000, 6,000 years ago. And now, in America, despite it getting kind of lost in the asana craze, yogis are beginning to really look for that place that Swami Satchidananda symbolized.
The concept of integral yoga was to bring the teachings of yoga into all aspects of our lives by showing us how yoga could be a part of the way we would think intellectually, be a part of the way that we would act in the world.
Now looking back, it's interesting how things have changed. The number of yoga practitioners, the number of yoga teachers, not just in America but in the world, has grown exponentially in that intervening time.
He took the most profound, the most sublime teachings, and he made them very simple and clear. Not only did he make them accessible, somehow he had the gift to give us the confidence that we could practice them and derive the benefits.
Initially, I believed that if I had knowledge, then I would have the power to help and make all the differences that need to be made. And what you realize is knowledge is power, that's for sure, but it's not all the power you'll need to help. And in fact, the solutions to the wellness of individuals lies within them. So if I take you off to the operating room with the expectation on your part that I'll cure you forever of your heart disease, and all I'm really doing is palliating your problem, then a couple years down the road when you have recurrent symptoms because you continue to smoke or you're still gaining weight or you're not meditating or you're just not getting in touch with life, and sickness just becomes an obstacle to overcome to get back to the blandness of wellness, then we've missed the whole boat.
That's what integrated medicine to me is all about, is integrating the best of traditional and non-traditional approaches and using science to show what works, what doesn't, for whom and under what circumstances. In our studies, we use these very high-tech, expensive, state-of-the-art measures to prove the power of these very ancient, low-tech and low-cost interventions, like what we learned from Swami Satchidananda.
The Gita says, Samatvam yoga uchyate. Balance is yoga.
Sri Gurudev has always said, the highest compliment that you can ever pay me, he said, is to enjoy all the happiness and joy that I experience.
Very simple. Keep your body as clean as possible, your mind as clear as possible. That's all you need. And do it in any way you can, in your own way. It doesn't matter. That's why I say peaceful body, peaceful mind. And then you will be useful. You don't have to become a useful person. You will be useful.
Which is what you do in this moment, to realize who you are, to know who you are, to know yourself from the inside. Because that's what you get to take with you on the continuing journey. And people would ask him, what would your last words be? He would always say, see you later.
And it takes my breath away because it's just so incredible that these great beings are available and they can influence us, they can illumine us if we have ears to hear or eyes to see. In my own case, I saw the BBC documentary about Gurudev in 1990. It was called Gurus. And I saw it And at that time, with the consciousness I had at that time, I just thought, oh, another guru. And yet, 8 years later, I'm sitting with him in his study in Yogaville, saying to him, "You're my teacher." It really goes to show, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And until we are empty enough, we can't take in anything fresh. If we think we know a lot of stuff, all that stuff gets in the way of something fresh that can really illumine us, that can really take us on the next step of our journey. So I certainly owe a great debt to Swami, because definitely when I read those first 4 pages about him, I absolutely knew to the core of my being that if I didn't try and find him, I would regret that until the day I died. And that's really quite a strong conviction. And I wasn't the sort of person who went round saying things like that, but in that one instance, I absolutely knew I had to find him. And because I could already understand that he must be quite ancient, and I rang the publishers in America and said, "Is he still alive?" And they said, "Oh yeah, he's alive." And they gave me the telephone number of the ashram. I rang the ashram, and this was about January '98. I said, I want to come over now. And they said, no, the weather's not great, wait till March. And I could hardly wait until I got over there. And when we arrived at the ashram, I deliberately didn't rent a car, because if I have a car in the United States, I will start to go sightseeing. So we didn't rent a car. And the 2 swamis we met at the ashram were slightly alarmed by that. It's like everybody who goes to the ashram has a car, so it seems, at least if they're like us, coming from overseas. But I was absolutely clear I wanted to be in the ashram, in that energy, and not distracted by anything. And I said to them, I need to meet him. And they said, well, he's over 80, he doesn't really see people any longer, he has to spend quite a lot of time resting. But they said on a Saturday evening, he gives satsang. And they said he will be answering people's questions and will be singing. And so if you come to satsang, you'll be able to see him. And so, but they said, kind of like as a sort of, as a compensation, they said, but you can have lunch with the president of the ashram if you like, but you can't be with Gurudev. So I said, okay, I have to accept that. And I was walking down to the Lotus Temple, because the ashram is a huge site, and it's 1,000 acres, so you can walk a long way. And I was walking down there one day, and I was sort of praying as I was walking along. I said, look here, God, if Swami Satchidananda is my teacher, is my guru in this lifetime, I need a clear sign that this is my teacher. And I kind of left it at that. And in my mind, a clear sign would be that at satsang, he would kind of give me a knowing look, I know who you are, or a wink, or something, eye contact. And I left it at that. And then, I don't know, 48 hours later maybe, I sort of bumped into Letizia, because she was doing one thing, I was doing something else. And one of the Swamis had said to her, Gurudev is willing to see you alone, he's willing to see you privately. And just couldn't believe it. And so the way they arranged it was that we would see him in his study before the satsang began. So in Yogaville, in the ashram, they had this big hall called Shivananda Hall. And at one end it's a big stage, and there's a door on the left side, and there's a door on the right-hand side. And on the door on the left-hand side, that leads to his study. So what happened was, we got to Satsang early, and I don't know, there were probably 300 people there, something like that, a lot of people there. And every time the door to his study would open, everybody would sort of kind of spring to attention. Oh yeah, he's coming. And one of the Swamis came over to Letizia and myself and kind of said, okay, come with me, you can go and see him. So we walked down past all these people up to the door, and the door is open, and in we go. I can feel like 600 eyes following us into the room. And he's sitting there, and he's quite a tall man and really impressive. His long beard and his hair and his robes. And we were left alone with him. I thought, this is amazing. They don't know us, and yet they've left us completely alone with their teacher. So I told him about the prayer. I said, I prayed. I wanted something meaningful to happen. Clearly, this is a sign I couldn't possibly miss. We're actually sitting with you. So obviously you're my teacher. And he said to me, I hope I'm worthy enough to be your teacher. I said, no, I said, you got it wrong. I said, I hope I'm worthy enough to be your disciple. He kind of laughs. And I think now, it's like with my knowledge now, if I could go back, I'd have a different conversation with him. But it doesn't actually matter. It's what's in your heart. And I said to him, well, how's this going to work? Because you're in America, I live in England, I can't be at the ashram with you. And he said, look, pointing to himself, he said, this body will go. He said, this is impermanent. He said, the guru is the teachings. And he said, the teachings are all there. There's audio cassettes, there's videos, there's books. He said, you've got the teachings. Just go away and study it. And I still kind of wasn't really happy to accept that answer. I wanted something more. And I said, well, this is going to be very difficult, I wish you were kind of around and with me. And he said, where am I not? And I thought, oh, okay, I understand. The self-realized being, of course, experiences themselves as being one with everything. But me, I don't experience that. And then he looked at me, he said, create Yogaville in England. And I thought, oh great, this is not getting better. I wanted to be fed. I just wanted to sit in his lap, really. And, I didn't want to go home. I just wanted to stay there with him. And then I think, the interview, that was kind of over. So then we open that door back out into the main hall, and there's a slight buzz of people's conversations. But as soon as the door opens, a crack, you can hear the conversation stops, and out walks myself and Letizia, and then you can almost feel that slight kind of disappointment. Oh, it's those people. And we go and sit down, and then Gurudev comes out, everybody happy. But that's how I first met him, and it was a huge gift. It was a huge surprise. But as I said to you before we watched the video, you can have that inner connection with the teacher that is, way more powerful than that physical connection. Because often when I'd be with him, on his last visit to England, I'd catch myself looking at him thinking, well, you've got a body a bit like mine, and you walk around, and sort of the mind is saying, what is special? It's like, what is this X factor, this magic quality that I haven't got? And I could see that by having those thoughts, it actually creates a kind of an invisible shield between me and the teacher. So, sometimes one could almost argue that if you have the teacher actually in front of you, your mind can turn that very blessing into an obstacle. And he always said, when I leave my body, he said, I'll be able to do a lot more, way more than I can do in this limited physical body. And they say that really the mark of a great teacher is what happens after the teacher leaves the body. And if you go to Yogaville today, you can see it's flourishing. You can see that his teachings have stood the test of the last 12 years. And many people experience him in their lives in all sorts of subtle ways, and in some ways that are a little more tangible. We were there one Christmas, I think about a year or 2 years after he'd left the body, and when I would drive Gurudev around, he would sometimes talk about cars, because as you heard, he was an automobile engineer, and he would ask me about the car we were in, how big the engine was, things like that, and I'd say, oh, I know you've been given a few old cars by devotees, and he'd say, oh yeah, I've got an old Cadillac, an old Chrysler. He said, they're not mine, they belong to the ashram. They're very old, but he said, I like messing around with them, polishing them, and so on. So he and I, would have these conversations about cars. So when we were at the ashram about 2 years after he'd left the body, one night we got a phone call inviting us to go up to his house at about, 9 o'clock at night. And we were told, don't bring anybody else, just come up. It was Letizia, myself, her daughter. So the three of us went up to Gurudev's house, and the nun who was in charge of the house was waiting for us. And she said, I'm going to show you his collection of old cars. I was so excited. I thought, wow, at last I get to see these old cars. And though I spent time looking at the old cars and getting in and sitting in the cars and everything. And as we were leaving, I said to her, how did you know that I really wanted to see his cars? She said, I didn't. She said, I was in my little kutir, little cottage, and she said I was making a cake earlier on in the day, and she said it just suddenly came into my head, I have to ring Richard and get him to come up here, and I have to show him the cars. And so I thought to myself, if Gurudev wanted to send me a very clear message that he's still around and that we still have that link, that was a very tangible way, and I couldn't miss that sign. It was so strong and obvious. So that's one experience of knowing that he's around. So enough from me. Do you have any questions? Anything you want to say about what you've seen? Anything at all that's to do with integral yoga and Gurudev and your spiritual journey and so on? Hello.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Who was the teacher of his?
His teacher was called Master Shivananda, and he was from Rishikesh on the banks of the Ganges. And Master Shivananda must have been an incredible teacher, because he had about approximately 6 disciples who went on to be great realized beings, and they founded great yoga schools, and Gurudev was one of those. And I think it's true to say that Master Shivananda only met his guru once, and for one afternoon only.
Who was his teacher?
I can't remember. Did anybody know his teacher? Close the lid.
His picture's on the altar, isn't it? Master Shivananda. There's one on the right hand side behind the flowers, actually, but you can see it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he was a great yogi, and there are tape recordings of him teaching. I mean, he left the body, I think, in 1963. So he's been gone a while, and there isn't quite the level of kind of isn't the same body of teaching available in an audio video form, but he wrote many, many books. And there's stories of people visiting his ashram, and he'd say, Europeans visiting the ashram, and he'd say to them, oh, you must have a book, and oh, you must have another book. And he'd give them a pile of books a bit like that, and then they'd say, but Swami, how am I going to take all these books back to Europe? He'd say, don't you worry, I'll have them sent to you by air. He was like this great abundance, such abundance. Terrific teacher. Yeah. And his ashram still exists in Rishikesh, and he formed an organization called the Divine Life Society, and that's still going strong.
Shivananda centres in London too, aren't there?
Yes, that's true. There's one in Putney. Yeah. All right. If nobody else has a go. Hello. What's your name?
Satya.
Satya.
So how are we going to get the Lotus Temple set up?
Okay. The first thing we have to do is to build the lotus in our heart. That's where it begins. And then it will manifest on the outer form. There is another lotus being built. It will be inaugurated on December the 22nd of this year in Coimbatore in India. So if you want to go along, I can tell you how to get there. But ultimately, peace begins with us. As you saw him saying earlier on, if you want to see peace all around you, first you have to develop it in yourself. You can't go out there and force everybody else to be peaceful. But if you're peaceful, if you're truly, truly peaceful in your own being, then you automatically affect the environment around you. And that also has a wider effect. It's like dropping a pebble in a lake, the ripples go out. And so that's what he wanted us to do. He wanted each one of us to consciously work on ourselves. As he said, life will come along and rub and scrub you. It will ultimately polish you and make you into a wonderful diamond. But because you have free will, are you going to do it in a few lifetimes or a few thousand lifetimes? Now, we've all probably had, many, many lifetimes for us to get to the point where we're sitting here listening, being willing to listen to the words of Swami Satchidananda. So clearly, you've done a really good job so far. The thing is, we have to keep going, and by now we know too much anyway. There's no turning back. You know too much. You have to go forward. The only question is, how soon, with what devotion, and with how much depth. Ultimately, it's all up to us. We have that free will. I learned a lesson about 2 years ago. I went to an ashram up in the Himalayas with a guru who's similar to Swami Satchidananda, except that he took a vow of silence. So he's not spoken for 50 years, and he's 84. And I spent a month in his ashram, and nothing remarkable happened to me. But what I realized was, I was living a spiritual lifestyle at home. I meditated, I chanted, I went to Krishna Das concerts, I would hang out with spiritual people and all this sort of thing. But somewhere the passion, the real hunger for God realization, it wasn't really there. You know, the flame had kind of become rather low. And I realized in the month in that ashram, it's like, it's not good enough to have a spiritual lifestyle. I need to have that deep and utter passion to realize the God within. And Ramakrishna said, and I think Gurudev's also repeated the story, unless you want God with the intensity that a drowning person wants air, you know, it's going to take a long time before it happens. So my experience has been recently, I need to raise my game. And this is a good thing about having a Sangha, a spiritual family, because we can remind one another that, you know, that's what's needed. You know, we can all be constant reminders. I don't mean that you go around telling everybody, you know, come on, you've got to raise your game, but you know, by being together, we do actually elevate ourselves. Potentially, we can bring out the best in ourselves. And then, maybe a lotus will arise in Kilburn. Okay, so we'll now do the closing chants. I think if we stay seated like this, it would be nice. You just need to have the chant.
Happiness be unto all, perfect health be unto all. May all see good in everyone, may all be free from suffering. Asatoma Satgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityoma Amritangamaya. Lead us from unreal to real, lead us from darkness to the light, lead us from the fear of death to the knowledge of immortality. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That is full, this also is full. This fullness came from that fullness. This fullness came from that fullness. That fullness remains forever full. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sahavatu Sahamunatu Sahaviryam Karavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidrishabhai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May He protect us, grant us wisdom's fruit. May we gain energy to know the truth. May our intellects grow clear and bright. May we cherish no ill feelings towards anyone. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Shvasambhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamikam Bandhanam Mrityom Mukshiyamamritat. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. We worship the all-seeing one. Fragrant he nourishes bounteously. From fear of death may he set us free, to realize immortality. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Jyoti, Jyoti, Jyoti Swayam, Jyoti, Jyoti, Jyoti Param, Jyoti, Jyoti, Jyoti Arun, Jyoti, Jyoti, Jyoti Shivam, Vana Jyoti, Sama Jyoti, Vana Jyoti, Yana Jyoti, Maha Jyoti, Yoga Jyoti, Vana Jyoti, Nara Jyoti, Ema Jyoti, Yoma Jyoti, Eru Jyoti, Meru Jyoti, Eka Jyoti, Eka Jyoti, Eka Jyoti, Jyoti. Light, oh light of self-effulgence, light, oh light of absoluteness, light, oh light of gracefulness, light, oh light of auspiciousness, light of Shiva, light of moon, light divine, light of wisdom, light of heaven, light of yoga, light of wind, light of sound. Light to light, light of water, rising light, light of light, the only light, the only light, the other light, the light of light. Kayena vacham manasendriyena Pudyatmanam prakrite swabhavat Karomi adyat sadalam parasmai Guruva varayeti samarpayami. Whatever actions I may perform, impelled by the forces of nature, by body, word, mind, senses, intellect, soul, I offer to the feet of my Sadgurudev. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May the entire creation be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May the light of truth overcome all darkness. Victory of that light. Jai Shri Satguru Maharaj Ki Jai.